novels, although the novels are important, I think that you can actually teach them to learn to be independent thinkers, critical thinkers, which is something we don't really have today, and to add to critical thinking, to think in a 360-degree way, to think in a visual manner, because in this day and age of AI, everything is completely changing. Yes, everything is changing. Yeah. So rather than try to bring them to how we grew up, or thinking that sit down and read a novel, this is the most important thing.
It will teach you English.
To teach you English, yes, how our mothers brought us up. You can actually get them to see the different aspects. You know, advertising is storytelling. Maybe your child loves a product, loves Coca-Cola, loves some form of chocolate, and you tell them, you know what, this is something that was written, it's scripted before they brought all these actors. And so you will let them know that the skill that is necessary for the thing that they love is rooted in writing and in storytelling.
Wow. So in writing, what would you say your genres that you love, that you like, not just reading and absorbing and consuming, but what would you say, if you had to characterize yourself in a genre, what would that be?
Oh wow, I think maybe fantasy. I love fantasy because it has a lot of opportunity. Yes, there's so much that could happen in there.
Creative license.
Thank you. If I don't like the way the world works, I can make up my own with its own rules, with its own atmosphere, with its own even species. Although I haven't reached the stage of writing species, but this is the kind of fiction that I usually find myself gravitating towards.
I'm a fan of fantasy, and most of the reactions I have found from our traditional parents is that they fear or shun what they don't understand.
Yes.
And many times fiction is from the darkest, funkiest, and maybe weirdest corner of somebody's mind. And many times we found that fantasy as a genre is not embraced by maybe our traditional parents, teachers, even in schools. And yet, looking at things like Chronicles of Narnia or reading Hannah Hannard, Hind's Feet in High Places, allegories, you know, Pilgrim's Progress. This is fantasy, and they have such deep connections to themes like creation, like Christianity, like, you know, faith. So how do we, as a writer and as somebody who teaches writing, how do you, when you find traditional African students who are afraid to delve into those spaces in themselves, how would you encourage them to welcome new creative ways of expressing themselves, telling stories, but also debunking things that we have bound ourselves with for a long time?
Yes. That's a really good question. And interestingly, I don't see a discrepancy between the genre of fantasy and us as Africans, because we have stories. Our stories that our forefathers knew were actually very fantastical. If you think about it, they had very many supernatural elements. I mean, cows coming from the sky. Thank you. I don't know, Nambi and Chintu and all those different stories.
Maybe where married the witches fly.
There we
they
go.
Have flaming bottoms.
Was there someone who gave birth to a river? I don't remember one of those
someone
stories.
Gave birth to a river.
I know, you see. So thank you. Gave birth to a river. And so our stories, if we actually categorize them into a genre, are fantasy. And in this day and age, they also call it speculative fiction, where there are elements of speculation, where you're thinking about how could something have happened? How was this world created? Oh yes, there must have been some guy with a cow, and he came and he did. So now we are speculating because clearly none of us were there. Yes, but that is also a form of supernatural writing, fantasy, and there is no discrepancy between us as Africans and what we have been taught by our forefathers. And even if you ask your mother, these stories, I'm pretty sure she's full of these stories.
Really fantastic ones.
Exactly.
But then you find that when it comes to watching them, and it becomes too much. I think maybe because of the visual arts, I don't know. But now getting back to writing and maybe your favorite genre, and then how do you define yourself? There are many writers online. There are many people that might want to write for leisure, that might want to tell their stories. that might want to enunciate on a concept that's really itching at the back of their minds. How do you manage being creative, doing research, and plagiarism, the ethics of writing?
I think that it's a very thin line.
Yes.
I think that most importantly, if you do have something that you really want to write about, it's important to position yourself in a place where you understand that there might be some plagiarism here. Having said that, everything that we do as creatives is filtered through all these different things that we have consumed. Whether you've watched a movie,
There's
whether
always an influence.
Exactly. Everything comes into the cauldron of your mind, and then your voice, whether you're writing, whether you're speaking or telling stories to your children, you are filtering these stories through, and you come up with your own different take on whatever aspect it is. It doesn't matter if you're writing factual things. You actually have an opinion that is shaped by everything that you have actually consumed before. So then it's important, I think, as a writer, this is what I do. I keep note of what it is that I have read that I think that
Has
is
influenced you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that if it happens to reappear somewhere, my mind makes a connection as to where I got this. There is this thing of just consuming everything and you don't know where it came from, and then you say something and someone is like, wait a second.
That's not original.
Didn't Eva DuVernay say? And you're like, oh yeah, I think she did.
Because it's very serious, and as a lawyer, I'm very concerned about it. Precious is going to write a novel on ChatGPT, and then somebody else is going to sue and say that you've taken my idea, and then maybe someone is going to read what you've written and write an advert for something, and then someone else. For instance, you saw what happened with Apple and Android, and the things they've had to do because of I think it was a Note 10 or something, one of the phones that was designed with the other's design and thought. But when you think about it, phones had evolved to that level of utility, and it was it's common for Gen Z to think a certain way.
Yes.
So if you have two Gen Z developers, it's very likely that they're going to think this phone should be waterproof. So,
it's true.
And yet in the law, it's the first to register it, the first in time.
Exactly.
Who will take it. So as a writer, and you have been an editor.
Yes.
How do you, what do you filter? If we were writing for you, for instance, where does plagiarism stop and creative borrowing start?
Yes, again, like I said, it's a very thin line. I would like to just mention one thing about most creators understand what the zeitgeist is. What that is that we believe that there is a certain amount of ideas that are floating in the atmosphere at a certain point in time. Most creators actually understand this. And it's those of you who are tuned to that pick it up and then run with it. That's why you find so many similar things, whether it is movies that come out at the same time, people are writing about the same thing at the same time, and actually everyone knows that it's just floating around there.
So let me tell you something really creepy. I think I told you this in S4 and you didn't believe me. I wrote a poem and it was something called Speechless, and this was 2016. Okay, now I'm revealing ages, but at that time Michael Jackson released that song that was Clueless, Speechless. So I told people, he stole my song. And everyone was like, no way.
Nope. It's the zeitgeist, yes. And everything is floating around and you just pick things up. Yeah. That is why I think the law is important, because there are some people who act on things faster.
It was in 2016.
It doesn't matter. Let's keep it as 2016 for our benefit. So I think that when we understand that the law is also important in these things, that if you register it, you have to, because if and many people end up in court because of these issues. Yes, but I think that, I don't know, maybe it's going to be up to the judge, but you cannot actually claim ownership of a specific idea. However, I can claim ownership of idea if I wrote it down first, right? And yes, and I've articulated it first. and then all of a sudden it appears in your book, and especially almost verbatim, almost the same, that is where really plagiarism comes. So you have to look at the chronology of the manifestation or the articulation of specific ideas, and that is maybe how, when you get down to the law, you can separate all of these different things and make sure that people get credit for what they have, the work that they have done.
So, Precious, how much clout does the story carry because of the storyteller?
Right. You mean, does the storyteller...
Does the storyteller add weight to the story?
All right.
Does it matter who's telling the story? Well, they said that for as long as for as long as the lion doesn't have a gun, the hunter will always tell the story.
Exactly.
Will always write the story.
Yes.
So, and I'm asking this very intentionally, the brand of the writer. How important is that? Okay, I know there are shadow writers and all these things, but now we're speaking Precious writing, Fiona writing. When people, in your opinion, and I'm asking you as somebody who consumes writing as well, how much does the storyteller weigh on their story?
I think the storyteller is absolutely crucial because the storyteller has a specific voice, a specific point of view with which they will bring something forth. It doesn't even matter if it's necessarily writing.
Yeah.
If you and I witnessed the same event, you're a lawyer. Get to people who have witnessed the same event and tell them to tell you what has happened. And both of them will have their own version and their own opinion. So now that is how their mind is filtering a story and how they're articulating it and based on how they have understood it. So of course a storyteller is important, and that's why when people have stories to tell, important people who might not necessarily type, there's a difference by the way between writing and typing, because you may not know how to type,
exactly.
but you have a story and you tell people, you know, Michelle Obama's book was written by a team of people. So what they did was just filter her stories and bring out her voice in that. So those people have been trained to maintain the voice of the person.
Of the writer.
Yes, of the person who owns the story.
Okay.
Okay. And so even me as a storyteller, I have to know that I am telling this in my specific voice. But if I wanted to change my voice and write Fiona's story, that is when training comes in. I can do that. You see, because I have been trained. And this is why I tell people, of course, if you want to be a writer, please get your pen, go on Facebook, do whatever you want. But if you want to learn the craft of writing, do get into a course, do study something.
So where can people go for these courses?
I teach creative writing, obviously.
Okay,
but having said that, you can also enroll in different... Jennifer Makumbi teaches in Manchester Met, if you can go there, for her master's in creative writing, or other places, yeah.
Okay, so again, to the writer, the legitimacy of the voice.
Yes.
Speak about that.
I think, first of all, you have to have an understanding of your own identity, what it is that you want to say. You and I both know that when we were reading Mills and Boons, we started writing. Okay, we're giving these things away. Barbara Catland is rolling in her grave. Anyway, you find that you regurgitate what you have been reading. And most of us who used to read a lot, we find that we like to write. It is actually just a natural transition.
Because you have to pour out.
Yes, everything that you're consuming. Yes. But when you're still learning, guess what? You're going to sound exactly like what you've been reading. We used to write about blonde haired, blue-eyed, and you look around you and there ain't nobody who has blonde. And this is just because this is what we were consuming. Yeah. But what happens is that we learn who we are. We learn the topics and the things that are important to us. We learn what we want to stand up for through life, the things that pain you, the things that get your attention, family. Maybe you see your family.
This is very important, Precious, and I want you to speak slower on this. I know, Precious.
Rapping.
How do you, as somebody who's read so many things, and this is happening now with TikTok. I mean, girls, ladies, or gentlemen are finding identity suggestions on TikTok. Yes. Everybody is shouting at you on who you need to be, what you need to consume, how you need to look, what you need to believe. How do you find your voice? I like how you say that we learn our voice, which means it's not the first voice we usually have. So how do you get there, Precious?
I think what you're doing is important. Leadership. We need to have leaders who are writing, or rather speaking or guiding the young. Children are extremely important. That is why even those who have negative agendas are going to the children, because you can shape their voice into anything you want it to be if they are just wide open to that. And so parents have a great role to play in this. And also our leaders, like I've just said, religious places have to make sure that the young generation, and then you also have to let them understand that what they are being told, or by the people whom they love. Of course, sometimes the people whom they love may be dubious. However, the people whom they love, their parents, are not trying to remove their identity from them by telling them this is right and this is wrong. I think in this day and age, it's somehow frowned upon to say this is right and this is wrong.
I know. And yet I say that your parents are your first coaches in life.
Yes. And I do believe that a parent has a right to say, no, this is wrong and this is right. You have to give your children a compass and an understanding of morality.
A true north.
Yes, a true north, because like the scripture says, when you teach a child, they will not depart from it. But if we keep thinking and letting children think that they can pick whatever it is that they want, by the way, they will go with the wind.
They will have no voice.
They will have no voice. They'll flow with whatever takes it. Now, personally, just to say this really quickly, it took me a long time to find my voice, because I did have an identity crisis where I thought, as a writer specifically, I thought that people who are writing specific things were more successful than I was. So if I write about the things that the West is
writing
yes,
about,
and are concerned about, I will be a more important writer. I will be, of course, a more successful writer. And so I like it that these days, even people like Jennifer Makumbi are very, very vocal about our stories and about who we are and what we can talk about ourselves. And also, as a parent, tell your children stories. Okay, you don't have to just tell them, do this, do that, and all the nitty-gritty of morality. Yes. Can you sit down with your kids and tell them stories? Can you let them know that there's a way that they can connect with you through these stories? Yes. Because, like I've said, storytelling is one of the most effective way of communication. So if you start telling kids stories, they will find their voice through your storytelling, and also they'll be able to filter. You have to trust that if you're present in their lives to be their source of story, they will be able to filter the stories that they come across in the world.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, on these Fat Talks, we do something. We play a game with our listeners. And our guest of the day is always asked to tell us 3 things about themselves, and 2 or 1 of them must be a lie.
Okay.
Then the audience will decide afterwards.
Okay.
We'll see. It's really just to judge our audience, tickle them, look at how, because some of them maybe have never heard of you, but the intuition so far and how much we've spoken.
Yes.
So Precious, as a creative, I do not think I'm going to give you time to think about your truth or lies. You might make them too fantastic for our audience. So what would you tell us about yourself? 3 things, 3 lines.
Okay, number 1, I was one of the writers that was chosen to consult for Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. Number 2.
Wait. You speak very fast.
I do.
Consultant for Michelle Obama's book. Yes?
Yes.
Number
2, I met David Beckham once in a corridor.
It gets really juicy.
And he just smiled at me and I smiled back.
So David Beckham thought she was hot.
I did not say that. I did not
and he
say
smiled.
that.
I can tell you he doesn't smile often, so that was a score.
You know that for sure.
Yeah, I know that for sure. Yes.
And I have a short movie that is coming out this May.
Short movie coming out in May. How come I'm not in this movie, Precious?
My dear, I think your beauty will scare away everybody.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have our Truth and Lies session with our guest today. Precious says she was consulted for Michelle Obama's book as a writer. She also met Beckham once and made him smile. She is having a short movie come out in May 2023. So, what is true? What's a lie? Please let us know how deep you know Precious, how long you know. and let's judge you. So as that goes on, Precious, we are trying to promote ethical leadership here.
Yes.
And I'm sure that in influencing writing, in trying to find your African voice, your legitimate voice, you've come across the ethical challenges on our continent. What do you think is one of the things, what are some of the things, especially coming from a writer's perspective, that you think would influence ethical leadership?
Yes.
What do we do?
What do we do?
Yes.
Wow, if I solve this, do I get a prize? I think that it comes back to how our education system is. I really believe that the leaders that we have today haven't really found, this is my opinion, haven't really found the things that they are passionate about, the things that they should have been encouraged to do. I think that they weren't even told about the importance of leadership, what a leader should be, a servant leader. So there is this idea of prestige when it comes to...
So success took them by surprise.
It took them by surprise, and also they didn't really know the purpose of it. Why has God given me this position? How am I supposed to act in this position? Is it just about prestige? Is it just about the title that I have? And is it just about my access to resources that, oh, now I'm in the cookie jar?
If I may interrupt, in Africa, they say that the child who's washed his hands will sit at the table of elders. And now I keep saying that the challenge of leadership today is once you are at the seat of elders, what do you do? How do you conduct yourself, and who prepares you for that? Continue.
Who prepares you for that?
Yeah.
And I think that we have to go back to the children. We have to get them when they're young. Teach leadership to the young. I know what you're doing is wonderful, but we need to go and catch them when they're younger. Exactly. Because there's a point in which you're set. You see? I know there's a, in our language, there's the proverb about correcting a tree before
yes,
exactly. But yeah, when it's still pliable and young, because there's a certain place where you get to as an adult and you're set. Now you're set in your ways, and it's very hard to change you. So we have to understand that changing this country is a long-term goal, and it's going to be done by our children.
Yes.
You see, we have to train them, because we're not going to be here to see most of the changes that we are hoping to see. But if we just keep floating about, complaining and putting pictures of potholes, and that's all we do, you see, without actually training the next generation, they're just going to have exactly the same problems that we had. So I think that we have to really take the training of children seriously, let them understand what leadership is, so that when they come to the table, their hands are clean and they know how to conduct themselves.
Oh yes, oh yes. I like that. I think what Precious is saying, if I may borrow her words and sort of overstep, is that yes, clean hand. If you wash your hands, you'll get to the table.
Yes.
If you keep your hands clean, you will
stay at the table. Exactly.
Thank you. That's very, very amazing for us. And just to comfort you, Fidelis Leadership Institute has a FAT Foundation. We call it a FAT Foundation. And we are partnering with various career guidance initiatives like the Bakash Foundation. We're doing programs in schools, career fairs.
Yes.
I think we've participated in 2 so far.
Wow.
So we are encouraging people, and I'm glad that there are programs out there that are actually targeting the young people. I don't know whether as writers, I don't know whether you belong to a writers guild or something, and I think also it would be powerful to help young people find their writing voice while they're still really, really young. Because that dilemma you had of the West, sometimes I find it even on our tweets.
Yes.
Sometimes tweets sound like American journalists, you know, and yet you're thinking, hey, we're in Africa here, you know?
Exactly.
That voice, I don't recognize it. It has an accent.
Yes.
It has and the things that it's elevating as important might not be relevant here at this point. And that's why we're doing Fat Talks. I know that, you know, we have TED Talks, which are about technology, education and development, but we thought, you know, on this continent, I think ethics is something that's terribly, terribly lacking. So if we say Fat Talks, we want leaders who are just basic, faithful, available and teachable. So Precious, where is Precious supposed to be maybe in 10 years' time? I'm asking you this because you told me that you would be the best girl in the country. And you wrote it down.
I did.
And you had just gotten some really horrible marks in history. I remember we were in S5. And you told me this is faith. This is me putting God to the test. So let's do that. 10 years. Where does Precious see herself?
Right. Can I just start by saying, it's true that I took a long time meandering in the wilderness because I had taken up voices that were not my own. I believe that I am a storyteller in different media. It's not just in writing, and that is why I've moved also into film, which I'm finding a niche, and also radio. I believe that in the next 10 years, I will have more than one international movie.
Wow.
That is a goal that I'm aspiring to, and a feature film, not just a short movie. I will have novels published because, like I said, my first one is being published. But the thing that's going to make me extremely proud in the next 10 years. It's interesting that you mentioned that we should teach the young how to write, because my mother and I and other partners have just started a writing program that we are piloting in a school. It's called the Class Authorship Corner Libraries, whereby we want children to write their own stories. And we're going to put their stories in their own libraries in their class, so that each child can read their own their friends' stories, and each child can know, I am an author.
That makes them connect.
Thank you. And they can know that I am an author. So we've actually just managed to convince some funders to get... I know we have to pilot it first. And I'm so happy that you had Simon here, because Simon has done a great job with Fundibots, but in sciences. And
King.
Yes, Solomon, Solomon King. Yes, and he has done a great, I keep calling him Simon, sorry. And he has done a great job with Fundibots in sciences. And I keep saying to my friends, I'm like, you know what he has done for sciences, I want to do for arts. But to teach children.
We're kind of
So in 10 years, we will have a group of a whole generation of writers. Yes.
Thanks to Precious, Colette.
That's
and
true.
Lillian Tindiapo.
Yes, remember.
We shall remember. So thank you for being a person of purpose. How does somebody find their purpose, Precious?
Through lots of wandering. I have to tell you that is, I think it's somewhat comes with searching. You do have to look for it, and you do have to have a group of people who you trust to listen to.
So it's okay that you're lost if you're lost.
I think it's okay, yes, in a sense.
No, because we are speaking to people here, and somebody out there might be feeling, I have not yet found my voice. I have not yet arrived. I am still... So many things are tugging at my heartstrings, and I don't know what I love exactly. Yes,
I wouldn't call it lost. I would just call it you're looking or you're searching. And I think that, like we believe in God, God always answers a searching heart. I think it's important to question. I think it's important to try different things. Don't knock writing just because you're a scientist. There are many scientists out there who are poets, okay? And even you poets, don't knock science. Try something new. Let us learn how to embrace different things. Let us learn our parents. Get your mom to play a video game.
Oh, you should see her
exactly.
When, she's doing her exercises and did everything on YouTube.
On YouTube. You see? Yeah. And so as you're looking at all these different things and you're keeping an open heart, there's a difference in open mind and open heart, because sometimes open minds take in everything. An open heart that is genuinely searching, you will find. But also, can we encourage people to explore, especially reading? Can people read more? Can people read all forms of...
What would you tell us? What are some of your greatest writers?
Well,
just
obviously...
pick a few.
Well, other than my mother, we're not being biased. I do love Jennifer Makumbi's books in the form of fiction. She's very great at writing
What has
fiction.
she written?
She wrote Chintu, which was a first published novel, although it wasn't.
Wow.
And then the recent one is called, I think A Girl is a River, but that's the name of the American version. The British version is called The First Woman.
Wow.
So those are the two books I think that and she has another collection of short stories called Manchester Happened.
There was a fantastic writer, and I found out later that, do you remember the Moses books?
Yes.
So the Moses books, there are these books about this young
Moses.
juvenile delinquent who's put in Kampirinisa. And he does all these things, and he gets up to all these things. Of course, the kids of today might not understand what Kampirinisa is, but it's still there.
Yes.
It's still there. It's a rehabilitation place. And there's this naughty boy called Moses, and he got up to all sorts of things. And then later on, I discovered she was called, I think, Barbara Kimera.
Yes, she's called Barbara, yes.
Was it Kimera or Kimenia? I don't know. But she was one of my favorite writers. But okay, so another favorite?
Well, I would invite everyone to read non-fiction books as well.
Non-fiction?
Yes, not just
so
read biographies.
Purpose or...
Obviously, the purpose-driven life.
Everybody.
Rick Warren is a good book to start.
Yeah.
But also books about learning, about habits and how to organize your time. Because I think time management is something that's very important, especially for young people who are trying to be leaders. I do love a book called Atomic Habits.
Yes.
I do. I'm reading a book currently that's called The Practicing Mind, and it's just about how to...
Practicing Mind.
The Practicing Mind.
It's powerful. I haven't read that. That's by who?
He's called Stephen Pressfield, yeah.
Yes.
And I just like it because he teaches you that multitasking is not a thing, okay? You think that you can do 1,000 things. Yes, focus on one thing, and most especially understand that the process is the goal.
Yes.
Don't look at for an end
present.
product. Be present in the process, and then you lose the frustration, especially if you're trying to learn something new. You want to learn a language, you want to learn to do some tap dancing. I don't know what you want to learn. Yes, you have to be present. And
because I do struggle.
Learning how to tap dance?
Learning new things, precious.
Sorry.
If I learned how to dance before I tap dance. Okay. This is very precious, I must say. And I remember, for those of you that do not know this, Precious won Miss Namagunga.
Oh my goodness!
In an interesting contest.
Can we not even
talk
about that?
I'm going to tell my audience a very funny story. When we were in S1, we had those interclass competitions.
Yes.
And I was in the laundry with a group of girls, and then I told a huge fat lie that I could sing the Eskimoan anthem.
Eskimoan anthem, right?
Eskimo anthem,
yes.
And then, it became really tight. Precious, you don't remember this, by the way.
I don't think I do.
Actually made up something and sang it, and then everybody was like, Fiona, you're going to represent us. I said, no. And I ran to Precious and I said, what are we going to do? And then Precious ran for Miss Namagunga and won it.
I totally took the pressure off you.
To save my hide. So thank you very much.
She owes me a lot.
I hope there are no classmates out there who've heard about my huge hookah. But this has been really, really eye-opening. And I hope whoever is out there, you're trying to find your voice, you feel lost. And now I want us to speak to the older person.
Yes.
There's a lot of retirement happening, people losing jobs. COVID changed a lot of people's work environment. I mean, even Google now says everybody's entitled to 0.5 desk.
Wow.
Like you use 0.5. Why?
What
because
does that look like?
No, because you have to come to work maybe a few hours a week.
Hours, yes.
And those are the hours that you're entitled to
the desk. Wow.
So now that is changing so much.
Yes.
And people are in a crisis. I mean, and I used to love the conversations we used to have about Oprah Winfrey and at what age. And I want you to go there. When is it too late to find your purpose?
It's never too late to find your purpose.
Yes.
That's what I believe. I think that there are so many people who... I remember someone saying, Morgan Freeman didn't start acting until he was in his 40s or something of that sort.
When did Oprah Winfrey start?
Yeah, she started her show, I don't know, was she in her 30s? It was quite late. In speaking, people call it late, but I don't think that it's late. Especially, I think that today we have so many great opportunities, because the things that you studied are not necessarily the things that you have to have a career in. Absolutely. And if you want to know anything,
that again. You know, you speak too fast.
Sorry,
but it's okay. You're my friend. You forgive me for saying that.
The things that you studied are not necessarily the things that you have to have a career in. You can pivot, especially after COVID. Everyone was talking about pivoting. It's not just for firms and organizations to pivot. As an individual, you can pivot. You can say, oh my goodness, I have been a lawyer all these years and I wanted to be a painter. And now I can paint and sell my art on some website, you see, and people will buy it, you see, and you can actually make a living. Most especially, understand that fear it can be your friend, but it's not your dictator. You have to do the thing even if you feel afraid.
How can fear be your friend?
It can be your friend when you recognize what it is, and once you recognize it, to use it as a trigger to actually move forward as opposed to be stagnant.
How?
Meaning, for example, I'm afraid that I'm too old to start tap dancing, right? And then I'm afraid, I know, I'm going with it. All of a sudden, I feel like I want to tap dance, but I'm feeling like I'm really old, and I feel that fear, and I feel inadequate. And now, rather than saying, oh man, I'm too old, and then I just go back under the duvet, I realize and use that fear as a trigger, or rather than as a propeller to say, okay, I'm afraid of this. That means this is my trigger to actually step out and try and put myself out there. So you twist it on its head. Rather than it being something that holds you back, it is going to be the trigger that propels you. Oh wait, I'm afraid of learning a new to code, for example. If you're in your 50s and you all of a sudden you realize you really love computing, and maybe you're afraid to contact Solomon. But you know that it's so easy to contact these people now on Twitter, you see? And I think that once you feel, to DM them, once you feel that fear, now you know, oh wow, this is a place that I'm going to explore, as opposed to a place I'm going to run away from. That is how you turn fear on its head and use it as a friend. As opposed to a hindrance.
I was always one of the most fearful people. I think you know this. Those of you that don't know, every time I read at assembly in school, my legs used to shake so much. I needed a prop, and Precious was my prop. She was standing there.
You owe me money. Owe me money.
And you used to say this scripture under your breath every time you're holding me. You'd say, "I've not given you a spirit of
fear,
but of
love,
power, and a sound mind." So if you're out there and you are inebriated by fear, it's probably that the devil has realized that you're going to shine. So as she says, use fear as your map. Where you are afraid, endeavor to explore, because there's probably something really awesome
waiting for you on the other side. Yes. Exactly.
Yes, that's very, very inspiring. I want to see how far our poll has gone. Precious has 3 things we are talking about. She has consulted for Michelle Obama. These are not truths or lies. It's you to decide. She met Beckham once and he smiled. And she has a short movie coming out in May. Please let us know what you think, what's the lie and what is true. I'm trying to look at our poll as we speak. Let me see. I'm not seeing it yet. But I want to recognize our people that are online. We have a lot of people that are online. And let me look at the poll now. Yes. So apparently, what do I think? I think you met David Beckham. Okay, Precious. So 100% think you have met David Beckham. That is really scary. People, please go onto our page and participate in our poll. Has Precious met David Beckham and blown him away? Was she consulted for Michelle Obama's book? And does she have a short movie coming out? What is true and what's a lie? So this is where we welcome our listeners. If you have a question, you can put it on Twitter, or you can reach out and ask to speak. Just click on your microphone, you'll be given a chance to speak, and you'll ask your question. Anybody out there?
Anybody out there?
Anybody out there? Okay, let's continue as we wait for people to get into this. So Precious, again, storytelling, the power of storytelling. You are a person of structure. If someone was
Smart 24, driving business.
UDC came on board in December 2020. When they joined us at a time, basically we are non-operational.